The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a small city. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the floating seats that hung in the air around a central platform. The noise was incredible. Every species spoke in their own language, creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, growls, and electronic sounds that would drive most creatures mad. Commander Hyunwoo stood at the edge of the transport platform, watching the chaos through the shimmering energy field that kept him hidden. His uniform was simple compared to the elaborate robes and armor worn by the alien delegates. The blue and silver fabric bore patches and symbols that no one in this room would recognize. On his chest, a small badge showed a blue planet with a single moon. "Are you ready for this?" asked Dr. Soo-jin, standing beside him. She was shorter than Hyunwoo, with kind eyes that had seen too much during their long journey to this place. Her medical scanner hung from her belt, already recording the biological signatures of dozens of new species. "As ready as anyone can be for making first contact with people who think you're a fairy tale," Hyunwoo replied. He checked his translator one more time. The device would convert his words into Galactic Standard, though he wondered how well it would work when he started talking about things these aliens had never heard of. The transport beam activated. One moment they were hidden. The next, they stood in the center of the Great Hall. The effect was instant and dramatic. Every conversation stopped. Thousands of eyes, sensors, and other detection organs turned toward them. The silence was so complete that Hyunwoo could hear his own heartbeat. A creature that looked like a cross between a lizard and a tiger rose from the highest seat. Its scales gleamed under the artificial lights, and its claws clicked against the metal armrest as it gripped the chair. This was Supreme General Kreshtai of the Velcari Empire, the most powerful military force in the known galaxy. "What manner of creature dares to interrupt the sacred council?" Krishtai's voice boomed through speakers that translated his words into hundreds of languages. "Guards, remove these intruders at once!" Hyunwoo raised his hands, palms forward, in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "Honored delegates, I am Commander Hyunwoo of the Terran Federation. We come in peace, seeking dialogue with the Galactic Council." The word Terran rippled through the crowd like a stone thrown into still water. Murmurs grew into excited chatter, then into outright laughter. A floating jellyfish-like being pulsed with colors that Hyunwoo's translator identified as amusement. "Terran?" Krishtai's laugh was like metal scraping against stone. "You claim to be human? This is rich entertainment indeed. Tell me, little myth creature, do you also claim to breathe fire and grant wishes?" Dr. Soo-jin stepped forward. She had dealt with skeptical patients before, but never skeptical aliens who thought her entire species was fictional. "I understand your doubt, General. Our people chose isolation over 3,000 years ago. We've been watching and learning while you built your civilization." A new voice spoke from across the chamber. It belonged to Trade Master Zilnath of the Thrilln Consortium, whose people controlled most of the galaxy's commerce. The Thrilln looked like giant prawns wearing business suits, and they were known for their practical approach to everything. "Our records show no evidence of human civilization," Zilnath said, his mechanical voice flat and emotionless. "We have explored every system within 1,000 light years. We have found ruins on dead worlds that some claim belong to humans, but these are just stories, archaeological curiosities at best." "The stories are true," said a new voice from the transport platform. Captain Dae-hyun materialized next to his crew members, his arrival causing another wave of surprised gasps. Where Hyunwoo looked diplomatic and Soo-jin appeared scientific, Dae-hyun had the bearing of a warrior. His uniform was darker with more armor plating, and the weapon at his side was clearly functional rather than ceremonial. "Captain," Hyunwoo said quietly, "you're early." "The situation required it," Dae-hyun replied. He looked around the chamber, his gaze stopping on each major delegation. "Your records are incomplete because my people made sure they would be. When your species were still learning to make fire, humans were already traveling between stars. We watched your first steps into space. We observed your wars and your peace treaties. We decided you weren't ready to know about us. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted questions in dozens of languages. Some demanded proof. Others called for the humans to be arrested, and a few wise species simply sat quietly and observed. Kreshtai slammed his claws against his chair, the sound echoing through the hall like gunshots. Enough! These creatures mock us with children's stories. The humans of legend possessed technology beyond imagination. They could travel faster than light before any of us even reached our own moons. They built ships the size of cities and weapons that could crack planets. If you are truly human, where are these miraculous technologies? Hyunwoo and his companions exchanged glances. They had expected this moment, but it was still difficult to know how much to reveal. Our ships are here, Sujin said simply. 3 vessels, currently cloaked in orbit around your council station. Our technology has advanced considerably during our isolation. Impossible, declared Senator Hivrak of the Nexus Alliance. The insectoid being's antennae twitched with agitation. Our sensors would detect any ship within 10,000 kilometers. Captain Dae-hyun touched a control on his wrist. Computer, decloak the Harmony's edge. High above the council station, space itself seemed to ripple. What had appeared to be empty void suddenly revealed a ship unlike anything the assembled delegates had ever seen. It was elegant where their vessels were brutal, smooth where theirs were angular. Energy patterns danced along its hull in colors that shouldn't exist, and it was clearly larger than the council station itself. The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't surprise or amusement. This was fear. That ship. Trademaster Zilnath's voice carried a tremor that his mechanical translator couldn't hide. Our sensors still show nothing. It's invisible to our technology. As are our other 2 vessels, Hyunwoo said. We didn't come here to threaten anyone. We came because it's time. Your species have matured enough to know the truth. Humanity is ready to rejoin the galactic community. Supreme General Kreshtai stood slowly, his scales now a darker color that indicated deep thought or growing anger. If you truly possess such advanced technology, why reveal yourselves now? Why not continue hiding in your myths and legends? Dr. Sujin answered with the patience of someone who had spent years studying alien psychology. Because isolation has its limits. We've learned much from watching you, but we could learn more by working with you. Your species have developed in ways we never imagined. Your art, your philosophy, your unique approaches to problems we solve differently. We want to share knowledge, not dominate. The captain added, besides, some threats require cooperation. The galaxy is vast, and there are things in the dark between stars that make our advanced technology seem like stone tools. This statement sent another ripple of unease through the chamber. What could threaten beings advanced enough to remain hidden from galactic civilization for 3,000 years? Kreshti's claws extended fully, scraping against his chair. Pretty words, humans. But history shows that when a superior civilization meets an inferior one, conquest follows. Always. Then perhaps, Captain Dae-hyun said with a cold smile, it's time to make new history. 3 weeks had passed since the humans revealed themselves to the Galactic Council. 3 weeks of emergency meetings, heated debates, and growing fear among the major powers. The council chambers that had once echoed with laughter at human myths now buzzed with worried whispers about what these mysterious beings might do next. Supreme General Kreshtai stood before a massive holographic display in his war room aboard the flagship Death's Talon. The display showed star charts, fleet, positions, and intelligence reports about human activities. His scaled fingers traced patterns in the air as he studied the data with growing frustration. They've made contact with 17 different species, reported Colonel Vextar, his chief intelligence officer. Trade offers, cultural exchanges, Scientific cooperation. Some of the smaller worlds are already considering their proposals. Kreshti's claws scraped against the metal table. Clever. They're not conquering through force, they're conquering through seduction, making themselves seem helpful and friendly while they gather intelligence about our weaknesses. Sir, perhaps they really do want peace, suggested Commander Yilmoth, the youngest officer in the room. Their technology is clearly superior, but they haven't threatened anyone. The general's head snapped toward the young commander with predatory speed. Naive fool. Any species that can hide from galactic civilization for 3,000 years while developing godlike technology is not interested in friendship. They're planning something that requires them to understand us. First, on the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Minho sat in his ready room aboard the human diplomatic vessel Harmony's Edge. The ship was beautiful in its simplicity, with flowing lines that seemed to bend light around them. The walls displayed a live view of space, making it feel like sitting in a glass bubble among the stars. Lieutenant Yunji knocked on the door frame and entered when the Admiral gestured her forward. She was young for her rank, but her tactical skills had earned her a place on this important mission. Her tablet showed the latest intelligence reports from their monitoring systems. Admiral, we're detecting massive fleet movements in Velcari. Space, she reported. They're pulling ships from border patrols and defensive positions. It looks like they're preparing for a major operation. Minho studied the data with calm eyes. He had expected this. Fear made people do predictable things, and the Velcari were more afraid than most. Their entire power structure was based on military might. If humans were more advanced, it threatened everything they had built. How many ships? He asked. At least 300, sir. Possibly more. They're using communication blackouts and moving in small groups to avoid detection. They're coming for us, Minho said simply. Signal Captain J-Wan on the Silent Thunder. Tell him to prepare for combat operations but remain hidden unless I give the direct order. 2 systems away, Captain J-Wan received the message while standing on the bridge of his escort frigate. The Silent Thunder was smaller than the diplomatic ship, but packed with weapons and defensive systems that would make any alien fleet jealous. His crew of 35 was handpicked from the best the Terran Federation had to offer. Captain, called out Weapons Officer Tae Young from his station. We're ready for anything they throw at us. Our antimatter torpedoes alone could take out their entire fleet. Jae-won nodded but kept his expression serious. Remember, we're not here to start a war. We're here to protect our diplomatic mission. Use only the force necessary to defend ourselves. Engineer Yuri looked up from her console, where she had been monitoring alien ship designs. Sir, I've been studying their technology. It's impressive for this galaxy's standards, but compared to what we developed during isolation, they're still using primitive systems. Explain, Jae-won ordered. They're using fusion reactors for power when we've had quantum cores for 800 years. Their weapons are plasma-based, which can't penetrate our adaptive shielding. Their ships use chemical boosters with basic gravity drives while we have quantum displacement systems. It's like they're fighting with swords while we have plasma rifles. The captain frowned. This technological gap worried him more than it reassured him. When one side completely outmatched the other, wars became massacres. He hoped Admiral Minho could find a peaceful solution. In the neutral zone between human and Velcari space, that hope was about to be tested. Admiral Minho stood on the bridge of the Harmony's Edge as 17 Velcari heavy cruisers dropped out of hyperspace around them. The alien ships were massive, bristling with weapons and armor plating. They looked like metal beasts ready to devour anything in their path. This is Supreme General Kreshti of the Velcari Empire, came the transmission. You are trespassing in restricted space. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. Lieutenant Yunji checked her displays. Admiral, we're definitely in neutral space. They have no legal authority here. I know, Minho replied calmly. He activated the communication system. This is Admiral Minho of the Terran Federation. We are conducting a peaceful diplomatic mission in neutral territory. Your aggressive posture violates galactic law. Kreshti's laugh echoed through the bridge speakers. Galactic law. You creatures who hide in myths and legends dare speak of law? You are an infection that must be removed before you can spread. This ends now. The Velcari ships powered up their weapons. Energy readings spiked as plasma cannons charged and missile tubes loaded. Targeting systems locked onto the human vessel from every direction. "Sir," Yunji reported with remarkable calm, "they're preparing to fire. Should I raise shields?" "Shields are already up," Engineer Yuri called out. "They've been active since we detected the Velcari fleet approaching. They just can't see them." Minho opened a private channel to Captain J1. "Captain, you are cleared to engage if they fire first. Disable their ships but avoid casualties if possible. We want prisoners who can tell their people what happened." "Here!" "Understood, Admiral." The first volley from the Velcari fleet lit up space like a small sun. 17 ships fired simultaneously, sending hundreds of plasma bolts and missiles toward the human diplomatic vessel. The weapons struck the Harmony's edge dead center and did absolutely nothing. The plasma bolts scattered like raindrops against an invisible barrier. The missiles exploded harmlessly against the adaptive shielding, their energy absorbed and redirected into the ship's power systems. When the light faded, the human vessel hung in space completely undamaged. "Impossible!" Kreshtai snarled. "Fire! Again! All weapons! Maximum power!" The second volley was even more intense than the first. The Velcari ships overloaded their reactors to push their weapons beyond safe limits. The energy output was enough to destroy a small moon. It had the same effect as the first attack. "None at all. This is your last warning." Admiral Minho's voice carried no anger, only sadness. "Withdraw your forces and return to Velcari space. We don't want to hurt anyone." "Never!" Kreshtai screamed. "All ships, ramming speed. If we can't, shoot them. We'll crush them." The Velcari cruisers accelerated toward the human ship, their engines pushed to dangerous levels. They planned to ram the mysterious vessel and destroy it through sheer mass and momentum. They never made it. The silent thunder decloaked directly above the Velcari formation. Captain J1's frigate was 1/10 the size of the enemy cruisers, but when it fired, the results were devastating. Antimatter beams lanced out with surgical precision, striking each Velcari ship's engine section and weapon systems. In 30 seconds, the entire Velcari fleet was drifting helplessly in space. Their weapons were destroyed, their engines offline, and their hulls cracked, but not breached. The crews were alive but completely helpless. "This is Captain J1 to Velcari vessels. Your ships are disabled but intact. Medical assistance is available if needed. Please respond." The silence stretched for long minutes before Kreshtai's voice returned, much quieter than before. "How? How is this possible?" Admiral Minho answered with genuine sympathy. "We tried to tell you, General. Humanity has had 3,000 years to develop in isolation. We hoped you would listen to reason instead of choosing violence." "Your empire will know of this," Kreshtai said, his voice filled with defeat and growing fear. "Yes," Minho agreed, "and hopefully they'll be wiser than you were today." The news traveled faster than any ship could fly. Within hours of the Velcari defeat, every major government in the galaxy knew what had happened. A single human frigate had disabled 17 heavy cruisers without taking any damage. The impossible had become reality, and reality was terrifying. In the emergency session of the Galactic Council, chaos ruled. Delegates screamed over each other in dozens of languages while security forces struggled to maintain order. The Great Hall that had once been a symbol of civilization now looked like a marketplace during a riot. Fleet Commander Tae Min appeared, in the center of the chamber as a massive hologram. His image was 20 feet tall, allowing every delegate to see his calm expression and military bearing. Behind him, the shadows of enormous ships moved slowly across the star field, their true size impossible to judge from the transmission. "Honored delegates," Taemin said, his voice carrying easily over the noise. The automatic translators worked overtime to convert his words into hundreds of languages. "I am Fleet Commander Taemin of the Terran Star Navy. I come with an offer of peace and partnership." The chamber fell silent. Not the respectful silence of diplomatic protocol, but the fearful quiet that comes when prey animals sense a predator nearby. Ambassador Krixtal of the Zephyrian Collective was the first to speak. The crystalline being's facets reflected light in patterns that showed deep worry. "Commander, your forces have just attacked and defeated a Velcari fleet. How can you speak of peace after such aggression? The Velcari attacked our diplomatic mission in neutral space, Taman replied. They fired first. We defended ourselves with minimal force and caused no casualties. If we had wanted to destroy them, their ships would be debris clouds instead of disabled hulks waiting for rescue. Dr. Hai-Jin stepped into view beside the fleet commander. She wore the white coat of a scientist over her military uniform, and her gentle manner was a sharp contrast to the weapons of war visible behind her. We understand your fear. Our technology is advanced, but we didn't develop it for conquest. We spent 3,000 years perfecting our science, our medicine, our understanding of the universe. We want to share that knowledge. Trademaster Zilnath of the Thrilln Consortium leaned forward in his environmental suit. Your ships disabled our most powerful military force without effort. What guarantees do we have that you won't use this power against the rest of us? The same guarantee you have with any civilization, Tamin answered. Our actions. Judge us by what we do, not by what you fear we might do. But fear was already spreading beyond the council chambers. In a secret facility hidden in an asteroid, field representatives from 12 major species met to discuss what they called the human problem. Supreme General Kreshtai attended via secure transmission from his medical bay, his pride wounded worse than his body. They humiliated us, Kreshtai said, his voice weak but filled with anger. A single ship destroyed my entire task force. If they have more ships like that, if they have weapons we haven't seen yet, they could conquer the entire galaxy. Senator Hivrak of the Nexus Alliance clicked his mandibles nervously. Our intelligence suggests they have at least a dozen ships in this sector alone. If each one is as powerful as the vessel that attacked your fleet, they could overwhelm any defense. We might mount. Then we strike first, declared War Prime Gorthon of the Brutok clans. The massive alien's 4 arms gestured aggressively as he spoke. We gather every ship, every weapon, every warrior. We hit them before they can spread throughout the galaxy. Thetiao. Cosmic Assembly agrees, added Voice of Stars Yilandra, speaking for the energy beings that controlled 36 star systems. This threat must be eliminated before it grows beyond our ability to contain. Fleet Admiral Kreshatai managed to sit up straighter despite his injuries. I know their capabilities better than anyone here. We'll need everything. Every ship from every fleet. The largest armada in galactic history. Captain Boram stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel New Sol, watching her sensors with growing alarm. The ship was small and fast, designed for deep space reconnaissance rather than combat. Her crew of 22 had been mapping uncharted systems when they detected the massive fleet movement. Captain, called out Sensor Officer Wu Jin, I'm reading multiple hyperspace signatures converging on grid reference 77 Alpha. Conservative estimate shows over 7,000 vessels. Boram frowned at the display. She had never seen so many ships in one place. The energy signatures represented dozens of different species, all moving with military precision toward human space. Communications, get me Fleet Command immediately. Channel open, Captain. Fleet Command, this is Captain Boram aboard the New Sol. I'm transmitting tactical data on a massive enemy formation. They're heading directly for our defensive perimeter. Admiral Sung Ho received the transmission in his ready room aboard the battleship Eternal Vigilance. The ship was massive even by human standards, bristling with weapons and defenses that could destroy entire fleets. But as he studied the incoming data, even he felt a moment of concern. Over 8,000 ships, he said to his assembled senior staff. Every major military force in the galaxy, working together for the first time in history. Captain Ha-Yun of the stealth ship Shadow Walker had been monitoring enemy communications from deep inside their formation. Her ship was invisible to all known sensor types, allowing her to gather intelligence from the heart of the enemy fleet. Admiral, she reported via secure transmission, they're planning simultaneous strikes on all known human colonies. Their goal is complete extermination of our species. Admiral Sung Ho stood and walked to the massive viewport that dominated one wall of his ready room. Outside, he could see the human defense fleet forming up. 300 ships of various sizes and configurations, each one representing the pinnacle of human engineering and design. They want to end this before it truly begins, he said to his staff. They're afraid of what we might become if given time to establish ourselves in the galaxy. Commander Jin Su, his tactical officer, studied the enemy formation data. Sir, we're outnumbered 26 to 1. Even with our technological advantages, those are difficult odds. Perhaps, Sung Ho replied, but they're fighting the last war, not this one. They think in terms of numbers and firepower. We think in terms of capability and precision. The admiral turned to face his staff, his expression grim but determined. Signal the fleet. Activate reckoning protocol. It's time the galaxy learned why our ancestors chose isolation over conquest. Throughout the human fleet, ships began to change. Weapon systems that had been hidden within their hulls extended into firing position. Energy signatures spiked as quantum reactors powered up to full capacity. Defensive shields strengthened to levels that would have been impossible with conventional technology. Most importantly, the ships began to phase in and out of normal space. One moment they were visible on all sensors. The next, they seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The quantum displacement drives that allowed faster-than-light travel could also be used to make ships nearly impossible to target or hit. Fleet command to all vessels, Admiral Sung Ho broadcast. Remember our principles. We are not conquerors. We are defenders. Disable enemy ships when possible. Destroy them only when necessary. Every being in those ships has families and dreams. Don't forget that even in the heat of battle, the Coalition Armada dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 8,200 ships arranged in a sphere large enough to engulf a small moon. At the center of this formation waited the human defense fleet, looking like toys, compared to the massive force surrounding them. This is Supreme Commander Yothek of the Galactic Coalition. The transmission boomed across all frequencies. Surrender immediately and face judgment for your crimes against the galaxy. Resist and face total annihilation. Admiral Sung Ho stood on his bridge, surrounded by officers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. This is Admiral Sung Ho of the Terran Federation. You have entered our space with hostile intent. This is your only opportunity to withdraw peacefully. The response came in the form of 8,000 weapons firing simultaneously. The space around the human fleet exploded with energy as plasma cannons, missile launchers, and exotic weapons systems all discharged at once. The light was visible from 3 star systems away. When it faded, the human ships were gone. For a moment, the Coalition commanders thought they had won. 8,000 ships firing at once had created an explosion bright enough to blind sensors across half the system. When the energy dispersed and their targeting systems came back online, the space where the human fleet had been was empty. Target destroyed, reported Tactical Officer Vexnim aboard the Coalition flagship Galaxy's Wrath. No debris detected. Complete vaporization confirmed. Supreme Commander Yothek felt a surge of satisfaction. The crystalline being's facets glowed with triumph as he prepared to broadcast news of their victory to the entire galaxy. The human threat had been eliminated before it could spread. Then the human ships reappeared. They materialized throughout the Coalition formation like ghosts, becoming solid. One moment the space was empty, the next a human destroyer sat directly between 2 Coalition cruisers. The enemy vessels were so close that their hulls nearly touched, yet somehow the human ship had appeared without causing any collision. Impossible, breathed War Prime Gorthan as he watched his tactical display. They were destroyed. We saw the explosion. Captain In Sung stood on the bridge of the destroyer Storm's End, calmly studying the enemy ships that surrounded him. His vessel was smaller than most of the Coalition cruisers, but its sleek lines and strange energy patterns made it look far more dangerous than its size suggested. "Weapons Officer So Min," he said to the young woman at the tactical station. "Lock antimatter torpedoes on the nearest enemy command ships. Fire when ready." The torpedoes were invisible to Coalition sensors until they struck their targets. The weapons moved faster than light itself, appearing inside enemy shields before detonating. The explosions were perfectly controlled, disabling engines and weapon systems without breaching the hull or harming the crew. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out as human ships engaged the massive Coalition fleet. Each human vessel moved like it was dancing through space, appearing and disappearing at will while their weapons struck with surgical precision. Lieutenant So Young commanded a squadron of fighter craft launched from the carrier Heaven's Wrath. Her pilots flew ships that looked more like works of art than weapons of war. The fighters could phase through solid matter, making them impossible to intercept or destroy with conventional weapons. "Blue Squadron, form up on me," she ordered over the communications system. "We're taking out their command and control centers. Remember, disable only. No unnecessary casualties. The fighters swept through the coalition formation like a school of fish moving through a reef. Enemy point defense systems fired desperately at targets they could barely detect, while the human pilots calmly selected their targets and neutralized them with precise bursts of energy. On the coalition flagship, panic was setting in. Supreme Commander Yothek watched helplessly as his massive fleet was picked apart by an enemy force less than 1/20th its size. His communication systems crackled with reports of disabled ships and confused commanders. All vessels concentrate. Fire on the largest human ship, he ordered. Overwhelm their defenses with sheer volume. Over 2,000 ships turned their weapons toward Admiral Seung Ho's battleship Eternal Vigilance. The massive vessel hung in space like a gleaming sword, its hull reflecting the light of distant stars. Unlike the other human ships, it made no attempt to hide or dodge the incoming attack. The bombardment was incredible. Plasma bolts, missile swarms, and exotic energy weapons converged on the human battleship from every direction. The amount of firepower focused on a single target was enough to destroy an entire planet. The weapons struck an invisible barrier 3 kilometers from the ship's hull and simply stopped. The energy was absorbed and redirected, feeding back into the ship's power systems and making its defensive shields even stronger. When the barrage ended, the Eternal Vigilance was completely undamaged. "This is Admiral Seung Ho to all coalition." "Vessels!" came the calm transmission. "You have one opportunity to surrender. Stand down your weapons and prepare to be boarded for processing." The response was another massive volley from the coalition fleet. This time, Admiral Seung Ho decided that mercy had its limits. The Eternal Vigilance returned fire with a single weapon. A beam of pure energy lanced out from the battleship's main gun, striking the coalition flagship directly amidships. The beam didn't destroy the enemy vessel, but it did something far more demoralizing. It cut the ship cleanly in half, separating the bow and stern sections while leaving both parts intact and habitable. "Impossible," Supreme Commander Yothek whispered as emergency systems activated throughout his crippled ship. "No weapon can cut through our armor like that." Commander Jiwoo led her fighter squadron through the chaos of the main battle, her pilots weaving between capital ships like they were navigating an asteroid field. Her quantum fighter responded to her thoughts as much as her controls, making impossible maneuvers that would have killed any normal pilot. "Phoenix leader to all fighters," she broadcast. "Enemy morale is breaking. Push harder, but remember the rules of engagement. We want prisoners who can tell their people what happened. Here." Pilot Kyung-soo, flying her wingman position, destroyed another enemy cruiser's weapons systems with a single antimatter burst. "Phoenix leader, this almost feels unfair. They can't even see us coming." "War is never fair," Ji-woo replied. "That's why we try to end it as quickly as possible." The human cyber warfare teams, led by Chief Dong-hyun aboard the electronic warfare ship Digital Storm, had been busy throughout the battle. They infiltrated enemy computer systems, turning coalition weapons against their own ships and feeding false information to enemy commanders. "Chief," reported Technician Yoo-jin, "I've gained access to their fleet coordination network. Should I shut it down completely?" "Negative," Dong-hyun replied. "Redirect their communications instead. Make their ships think they're receiving retreat. Orders from their Supreme Commander." The effect was immediate and devastating. Coalition ships began withdrawing from the battle, convinced that their leadership had ordered a retreat. Those vessels that tried to maintain the fight found their own weapons turning against them as human hackers took control of their targeting systems. Dr. Yuna watched the battle from the medical frigate Healing Light, her screens showing the locations of disabled enemy ships. Each vessel represented thousands of living beings who had been fighting for what they believed was right. "Medical teams, prepare for mass casualty treatment," she ordered. "The moment this battle ends, we'll be saving lives regardless of which side they fought on." It was a sentiment that defined humanity's approach to warfare. Even in the heat of battle, they never forgot that their enemies were people with families and hopes and dreams. The battle lasted less than 2 hours. When it ended, over 6,000 coalition ships were disabled or destroyed, while the human fleet remained completely intact. The survivors fled in panic, broadcasting messages of surrender and begging for mercy. Admiral Seung Ho stood on his bridge, looking out at the field of drifting enemy vessels. "All ships, begin search and rescue operations. Every survivor gets medical treatment and safe passage home." Commander In Sung shook his head in amazement. Admiral, they came here to destroy us, to wipe out our entire species, and you want to help them. That's what makes us different from them, Seung-ho replied. They see threats to be eliminated. We see people to be understood. Today they learned that humanity cannot be conquered. Tomorrow, perhaps they'll learn that we don't need to conquer them either. The greatest military defeat in galactic history had ended not with revenge or cruelty, but with mercy. It was a lesson that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be truly powerful. 6 months after the Great Battle, the galaxy was a different place. The massive defeat of the Coalition fleet had sent shockwaves through every civilization, from the smallest trading posts to the mightiest empires. Species that had once dismissed humans as myths now sent desperate ambassadors begging for trade agreements and protection pacts. President Jinwoo stood at the podium in the rebuilt Galactic Council chambers, looking out at an audience very different from the one that had laughed at humanity's first appearance. The delegates sat quietly, respectfully, some with obvious fear in their alien features. The arrogance that had once filled this room had been replaced by something much more valuable: wisdom. Honored delegates, President Jinwoo began, his voice carrying easily through the advanced translation systems that humanity had gifted to the Council. We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as neighbors seeking to build a better future among the stars. Fleet Admiral Mi Young stood beside him, her uniform bearing the scars of the recent battle. She had requested to keep the damaged sections rather than have them repaired, saying they served as a reminder of the cost of unnecessary conflict. Her presence was both reassuring and sobering to the assembled delegates. The Velcari delegation was led by a new representative. Ambassador Velthara was younger than the previous generals who had spoken for her people, chosen specifically because she had not been part of the old military leadership. She rose from her seat with obvious nervousness. The Velcari Empire wishes to formally apologize for our aggressive actions, she said, her translated words carrying genuine remorse. We acted out of fear and ignorance. We see now that we were wrong about human intentions. President Jinwoo nodded graciously. Fear is a natural response to the unknown, Ambassador. What matters is what we do after we understand our mistakes. Dr. Su Min, now serving as humanity's chief diplomatic liaison, stepped forward. She had spent the past months working directly with alien governments, helping them understand human culture and intentions. Her patient manner and obvious sincerity had done more to build trust than any military victory could have achieved. We're here to share what we've learned during our long isolation, she explained. Our medical advances can extend lifespans and cure diseases that have plagued your species for millennia. Our agricultural techniques can end hunger on worlds where food has always been scarce. Our clean energy technology can power entire civilizations without damaging their environments. The transformation had already begun on dozens of worlds. The Thrilm Consortium, once focused solely on profit, now used human logistics algorithms to distribute resources more efficiently throughout their territory. Famines that had been considered inevitable were becoming things of the past. Trademaster Zilnath stood to address the assembly. The Thrilm people have experienced a revolution in our understanding of commerce and cooperation. Human advisors have shown us methods of resource distribution that benefit everyone involved, not just the wealthy. The crystalline Zephyrians had perhaps benefited most from human contact. Ambassador Krixtal's facets now glowed with patterns of genuine joy as she spoke about the artistic breakthroughs her people had achieved. Human harmonic resonance technology has allowed our musicians to create forms of beauty we never imagined possible, she said, her crystalline voice carrying musical tones that made the translation systems work over time. Our artists collaborate, now with human composers, creating symphonies that speak to beings across the galaxy. Captain Young Sik commanded the new Unity Station, humanity's diplomatic hub positioned at the center of galactic trade routes. The station was enormous, large enough to accommodate representatives from hundreds of species simultaneously. Its design blended human aesthetics with architectural elements from dozens of alien cultures, creating something truly unique. From his observation deck, Young Sik watched ships arriving and departing constantly. Velcari vessels carried human medical supplies to worlds devastated by ancient plagues. Thrilln freighters transported fusion reactors designed with human assistance to colonies that had never known reliable power. Zephyrian cultural ships brought art and music to species who had forgotten how to create beauty. Ambassador He Rin joined him at the viewport, carrying reports from the latest diplomatic missions. "It's remarkable," she said, watching a joint human-alien exploration fleet preparing for departure. 3 years ago, they thought we were myths. Now we're planning joint missions to galaxies beyond this one. "Fear can be transformed into wonder," Young-Sik replied, "but it takes patience and genuine care for others." The joint exploration missions were perhaps the most visible sign of the new cooperation. Human ships worked alongside alien crews, their combined technologies opening possibilities that neither could have achieved alone. Engineer Chan Wu had designed hybrid systems that merged human quantum technology with alien innovations, creating vessels capable of traveling between galaxies in weeks rather than centuries. "The New Horizon expedition launches tomorrow," Chan Wu reported as he joined the others on the observation deck. 15 ships, mixed crews from 8 different species. Their mission is to map the Andromeda approach and establish contact with whatever civilizations they find there. The changes weren't just technological. Entire societies were transforming as they learned new ways of thinking about old problems. The warlike Brutak clans had discovered that human conflict resolution techniques could end tribal disputes that had lasted for generations. War Prime Gorthon, once eager for battle, now served as a mediator in interspecies negotiations. "Violence is easy," Gorthon had told a gathering of young Brutak warriors. "Any fool can destroy, but building something that lasts, something that helps others, that requires true strength." The energy beings of the Cosmic Assembly had been perhaps the most surprised by human philosophy. Voice of Stars Yilandra had expected a technologically advanced species to be coldly logical, but instead found humans who valued emotion, creativity, and individual expression as much as scientific achievement. "Your people have taught us that advancement doesn't require abandoning what makes us unique," Yilandra had said during one of the cultural exchange sessions. "You've shown us that technology should serve life, not replace it." Dr. Yun Ah now ran the largest medical research facility in the galaxy, where human doctors worked alongside alien physicians to tackle diseases and conditions that affected multiple species. Her team had already developed treatments for 17 previously incurable conditions and was working on dozens more. "Medicine is universal," she explained to a group of young alien doctors. "Pain is pain, regardless of how many hearts you have or what color your blood is. Our job is to heal, always to heal." The military academies had been completely restructured. Admiral Sung Ho now taught courses on ethical warfare and proportional response to students from across the galaxy. His lectures were among the most popular, not because they focused on weapons or tactics, but because they emphasized the responsibility that came with power. "True victory," he would tell his students, "is not defeating your enemy. True victory is turning your enemy into a friend." The Galactic Council itself had been transformed. Where once it had been a forum for arguing over territory and resources, it now focused on cooperation and mutual advancement. New committees had been formed to address galaxy-wide challenges: disease, poverty, environmental destruction, and exploration of unknown regions. President Jin Wu looked out at the assembled delegates one final time before ending the session. Representatives from over 300 species sat together peacefully, working toward common goals instead of competing for limited resources. "When our ancestors chose isolation," he said, "they did so to protect both themselves and you from a galaxy that wasn't ready for cooperation. Today proves that time has passed. We stand together now as partners in the greatest adventure any of us can imagine, building a future worthy of all our children." The applause that followed came from every species present. It wasn't the polite acknowledgement of diplomatic protocol, but genuine appreciation for a vision of the future that included everyone. Outside the council chambers, ships from dozens of worlds worked together to build new stations, explore uncharted systems, and carry aid to worlds in need. The age of isolation was truly over. The age of cooperation had begun. And in the depths of space, new vessels bearing mixed crews and hybrid technologies pushed toward distant galaxies, carrying the message that intelligence and compassion could triumph over fear and hatred. The legends had become reality, and reality was more beautiful than any myth.